The killer is still on the loose.
It was October 20th, 1970, and it were around lunchtime, and someone walked into Carol Ann Fitzmaurice's house and stabbed her 37 times. The 23-year-old nurse had no known enemies. No one had stolen anything from the house, and she wasn't sexually assaulted. Forensics found some hair and some fingerprints that have never been matched to anyone. Several witnesses say they saw a tall, skinny, gaunt man, possibly over 6 foot tall, who was seen loitering around the area. Police were able to find the murder weapon, a large butcher's knife, about 300 meters from the crime in a creek. Carol Ann, a popular girl who was known for her striking good looks, was found by her husband when he arrived home at 6 o'clock. Her throat had been cut, and there was an uncooked chicken waiting to go into the oven. Yeah, I know what you're thinking, but he had an alibi tighter than a cripple's Velcro shoes, and friends and family said they made the perfect couple. And by all accounts, he was heartbroken and died a year later in a motorcycle accident. The crime has never been solved. It was 1978, at the popular Ski Wing ski resort in upstate New York, a place to get away, one may lyrically wax, and for pleasure makers who set out, one would not expect a trip to the abyss. Even more so for the devil-may-care ski bums who worked there. Michael Fornes and Stephen Bender were regulars at Ski Wing, so much so they were offered jobs, and although financial rewards were minimal, they were given a season ski pass, had the run of the resort, and a key to the bar. And this suited the two ski bums just fine. After all, with a regular supply of ingoing and outgoing teenage girls who needed ski lessons, you don't even need a salary. But recently, things hadn't been going so good with the resort. Only a year before, there was a tragic accident. There'd been a ski lift malfunction due to improper maintenance, with the lift hurtling down the hill at speeds up to 60 miles an hour, where a young boy was killed. Not exactly making it a dream destination, so business had declined. But after renovations on the chalet and bar, they were hoping for an improvement in business. Cops figure that it was between 12:30 and 1:30 a.m. while the ski bums were preparing the slopes for the next day that their tractor broke down, and they figured that they'd go into the chalet bar for a little liquid refreshment. But when they went in to use the bar, they heard some sounds coming from the manager's office. Thinking that the drinking buddy were working late, they went in to offer him a beer. But when they went in, they found someone or someones helping themselves to the safe. And what happened next can only be speculated on. But one thing is for certain, it was their last night of employment with the Ski Wing ski resort. Fired, one may lyrically wax. The two had both been on their knees, one of them still holding a beer, executed at close range, 3 times each in the head. The two ski bums had obviously stumbled across professionals who took care of business. Cops figured there were multiple intruders because it would have taken at least 3 people to lift the safe. The executioners got away with $18,000. A janitor discovered the bodies at 3 a.m. You can't help but wonder if it were an inside job. And for 30 years, cops ran down suspects, tips, theories, and they got a whole lot of nothing. And it's now been 41 winters since the killings, and people on the slope still talk about the day they executed 2 ski bums. And the resort, that closed down 2 years later. I guess it's hard to enjoy yourself when you're skiing next to a portal to the abyss. Some may lament that Australia is a paradise. Beautiful weather, golden sand, perfect place to raise a family. Yeah, sure, that's what some people say. It was 8:30 in the morning, that Rihanna Barreau was given permission to go to the local mall to buy a Christmas card for her American pen pal. And that was the last time she was ever seen. Rihanna, who'd usually take the bus, but since they were on strike, her mother decided to go against her better judgment and let her walk. A neighbor said she'd returned home briefly at about 10:30 a.m., but her mother had gone out. The same neighbor said she'd heard her scream. When she went to investigate, she saw a white car pulling away. The same white vehicle she'd seen the last couple of days driving up and down the street. The search was one of the biggest in Australia's history, but it turned up nothing. And after over 18 years, not a clue. It's disappeared off the face of the earth. Kangaroo cops even offered $1 million reward for any information on the case, but there were no takers, which is surprising because I always thought Australians were poverty-stricken and rode around on camels and whatnot. They now believe that Rihanna was murdered, but still don't have a clue how or why. There are some who may lyrically wax, a sailor's life for me. The sea is where I wanna be. But I'm not entirely sure if that would be the case of the crew on the fishing boat, the Investor. The skipper, 28-year-old Mark Coldhurst, was a popular Washington-based businessman who had always dreamed of a life at sea and had made that dream a reality when he purchased one of the highest-tech fishing boats available, naming it the Investor because he believed that he was investing in his family's future. So Mark, his pregnant wife Irene, their 2 young children, and 4 deckhands set out from Washington on their maiden voyage, arriving in Craig, Alaska on September 5th, 1982, with just 5 days left in the fishing season. And by all accounts, the remote fishing village of Craig is about as family-friendly as pitching a tent inside of a retard's underwears. And anyone who says different is a filthy liar. Aware that it weren't the friendliest gathering of inbreds, Mark still decided to attend a birthday party at a restaurant thrown by his wife and crew with his kids in attendance, because the next day they were all flying back to Washington because his children were due to start school. The birthday celebration ended without incident, and at about 9:30, with a storm coming, they headed back to the ship. Then investigators figured between 11 p.m. and 12 a.m. during a loud thunderstorm, someone boarded the vessel, and while it was sleeping, executed everyone on board. The killer then spent the night with the bodies and at 6 a.m. in the morning took the boat a mile away to Fish Egg Island with the intention of sinking the boat, allowing the salt water to flood inside the engine coolant system. But there was only one problem. The boat was so high-tech that it couldn't be sunk. Witnesses say they saw someone coming back and forth from the boat several times, and they must have grown tired from trying to sink the Investor, so they set it on fire, turning the boat and the bodies inside to ashes. It was 2 years of investigation on the hillbilly island before the fish fuckers finally made an arrest. 22-year-old John Peel used to be a deckhand on the Investor, and apparently there were bad blood, and he'd been spotted in town buying gasoline and carrying it away. But after a 2-year trial, prosecutors couldn't prove it, had to let him go. And to add insult to injury, Peel sued the government and won $900,000 compensation. Eskimo cops say that the case is now closed because they had their man, but prosecutors couldn't seal the deal. In the land of the rising sun, gambling is highly illegal and only associated with the mob. The Jap mob, and for the Yakuza, their most popular gambling venture is retard wrestling, a super handicap pro wrestling. A Jap-only sport that many believe to be cruel and draconian, where cripples and retards are put into a ring. 2 go in, 1 come out, where the goofballs, who often need to be assisted into the ring, can sometimes battle almost to death, while their adoring fans scream. And the more handicapped you are, the better. Blind, crippled, retarded, it don't matter. The more fucked up you are, the greater the odds and the more profitable you can be. In Japan, they're like thoroughbred racehorses. It's estimated that in 2018 alone, super handicap wrestling brought in over $1 billion of illegal gambling revenue to the Yakuza, which can buy you a hell of a lot of sushi. which I generally don't eat because it gives me the diarrhea. But I'm guessing millionaire property developer Akio Kashiwa had more than his fair share of sushi. And it probably didn't give him diarrhea either, because he only ate at the finest restaurants and enjoyed the finer things in life in general, from pussy, fast cars, whatnot. He had it all. But he liked to gamble, and I guess that were his Achilles heel. And by all accounts and purposes, sometimes he were good at it, and would travel to Vegas and Atlantic City regularly. Apparently Lady Luck didn't always shine, and reportedly he once walked into a casino with 12 million and left with only 2. But I guess in life there are winners and losers. Anti-retard wrestling. When Kashiwa weren't propping up the stools in Vegas, he were betting on super handicap pro wrestling. By all accounts though, it wasn't too profitable, and he was losing an estimated $1 million per match. I guess it's difficult to predict the outcome of a sport when some of the athletes in it can't wipe their own asses. Witnesses say that he once got so angry that he ran into the ring and slapped one of the wrestlers, saying he were ashamed to all cripples. But it was on January 3rd, after a championship match where he lost 10 million. I guess the Yakuza decided they were going to close his account, because about 1 a.m. that night, someone walked into his luxury condominium and sliced him up about 150 times with a samurai sword, the direct calling card of the Yakuza. But at the end of the day, it's hard to feel sorry for a man who once bragged that he had licked enough coke off hookers' pussies to pay off the national debt. And I suppose in Kashiwa's case, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. I guess one could lyrically wax that any action taken or made out of hatred in history should be taken, dissected. We should figure out if it's something we should repeat. Such is the case of pretty 13-year-old Mary Fagan. I guess you could say that she'd had a rough life for such a young girl. Taken out of school when she were only 10 years old by her parents, and then put into a factory to work. At 13 years old, I guess you could say that she experienced more than a 13-year-old should. But when she turned up dead at her workplace, murdered, raped, sodomized, some would say that that terrible death released her from a terrible life to find something better. By 1913 in the States, although child labor weren't illegal, it was certainly frowned upon. And although a lot of industries still profited on it, but a lot of people saw those industries as money-grubbing Jew industries, getting rich off the blood of innocents. Enter one Leo Frank. I guess you could say that he were as Jewish gets. Not that there's anything wrong with that, mind you. A New York Jew that some would say was the poster boy of the anti-Semitic sentiments that permeated in the Deep South at the time. Young, rich, and he had an eye for the ladies, the younger ladies, and who can blame him? Because his wife were a pig. I hope that's not too offensive. It was when detectives discovered that Mary was last seen speaking to Frank. Well, it didn't take long for them to make an arrest. And on further investigation, a black sweeper came forward and said that Frank had offered him a large sum of money to help move Mary's body to the basement and write a confession letter to the police. Anonymous, of course. But the case quickly became more than just the murder of a pretty young Southern girl. A rich Jew, fancy suits, buying the best legal team money can buy. The defense brought forward a string of young ladies that said Franks were a hands-on type of guy, even offering young staff money for favors. And although there were many inconsistencies in the case brought forward by the expensive defense team, I guess it didn't matter and Frank's fate was sealed. Because on August 25th, 1913, after less than 4 hours of deliberating, a jury of Frank's peers found him guilty for the murder of Mary Fagan. Death by hanging. But hanging someone with money ain't that easy. And as the defense team put it, who you gonna trust? A fine, upstanding pillar of the community, or a filthy, lying, uneducated Negro? And I guess all the pressure put on by Frank's highfalutin friends and the various Jewish groups worked, because 2 years later, the governor of Georgia commuted Frank's death sentence, saying that he believed that there were enough evidence to suggest if Franks did it, he didn't act alone, and he believed the black sweeper had more to do with the crime than he were letting on. Plus, they found a shit that were near the body, and it turned out to be the sweeper's. That's fucking gross. Who does that? But it seems the good citizens of Georgia don't like the judge going against his word and taking back what he were given. So they decided to take law into their own hands. Because on November 25th, 1915, a large group consisting of over 100 men, some of those KKK members, stormed the prison that held Frank and removed him from his comfortable room with an ensuite bathroom, hot and cold water apparently, and took him out to a local park and hung him high, high, high. But apparently not high enough, because according to witnesses, Leo Frank's toes kept touching the ground and he was jumping up and down, and prolonged the process for over 35 minutes before his last breath left his body. By all accounts, the hanging turned into a freak show. People selling hot dogs, bringing their women and children, people paying 10 cents to kick and punch the body. And the true tragedy of Georgia's shame was that no one were ever charged for Frank's murder, and historians now believe that maybe Frank didn't kill that young girl and that it was a black sweeper. On Saturday 3rd, June 1995, at about 7:30 p.m., a receptionist at the Oslo Plaza, Norway's premier luxury hotel, discovered that something was wrong. The guests in room 2805, a Belgian couple, Jennifer and Louis Farragate, yeah, Belgium like the waffles, had exceeded their credit limit and were running a high tab, so the receptionist sent a message to the room. A text appeared on the TV screen. Please contact the cashier. Someone in that room immediately acknowledged that text and pressed OK. As the room was expensive, about $500 a night, they didn't want to trouble the guests too much. And there was a do not disturb sign on the door. After sending the text message, the receptionist noticed that 2 other similar messages had already been sent to the room. The guests had now spent 3 nights and they hadn't paid a thing. The woman who signed in, Jennifer Fairgate, was listed as 21 years old. The head of the cleaning staff had said no one had cleaned the room since Thursday, and well now Saturday, with the do not disturb sign never being removed. The receptionist sensed trouble and alerted hotel security. Thinking he was dealing with another deadbeat customer, the security guard came up to the 28th floor room, knocked on the door, and when he did, he heard a bang, what he believed to be a gunshot. Not wanting to alert the staff by calling on an open radio frequency, he runs to the edge of the hall and calls head of security on the phone. It is then head of security comes up to the 28th floor and comes to the room. It is now 8:04. The room has been unattended and unwatched for 15 minutes. He knocks on the door. He knocks again. Then he attempts to open the door with his key card, but the room is double locked from the inside, meaning only security staff can enter. He opens the door just a sliver and looks in. There is a woman on the bed in which he describes is in an unnatural pose. Lifeless, with the curtains moving. And he makes a decision not to enter the room and calls the police, who arrive 30 minutes later. When the fish-eating brigade arrive, they enter the room, and there's a woman in her early 20s lying on her back, eyes wide open staring at the ceiling, with a gaping hole in her forehead. They figure she died instantly. There's a significant amount of blood. She's holding a weapon, a 9mm Browning pistol in her right hand, which is resting on her chest. TV's still on. The room is tidy. Not much luggage. No sign of other people having stayed in the room. They open and close the case. And even before the forensic eggheads arrive, the cops send a report to the office saying it's suicide. But was it? Because although all cops like to sign things off quick, there's something that weren't right. There were a few simple things that the fish brigade couldn't make work when they were ticking the boxes. Questions that couldn't be answered. Like how come there were no fingerprints on the gun, as if it had been wiped clean, with all serial numbers filed off? And how come 2 shots were fired, with one going in a pillow? Why was the wound in her head pointing down, like someone was standing over her? And why was there a brand new purse with the brand name cut out, totally empty except for 35 rounds of ammunition? Was she expecting company? And speaking of company, who was the male guest that she signed into the hotel? Although no one saw him, There was male cologne in the room, and the gun used is one favored by the Norwegian intelligence service, and even the watch she was wearing is believed to be military issue, but who can say for sure, because the serial numbers have been removed. And even more bizarre, all the labels were cut from her clothing, including the one in his shoes. So if Jennifer Fairgate wanted to become a ghost, she, or someone, did a pretty good job of it. So did she shoot herself? Was she ordered to shoot herself? Or did someone do the job for her? Gun experts said it would be impossible for her to still be holding the gun after she'd shot herself. They also believed because of the heavy recoil on the Browning that she would have had to use two hands, that she had neither blood or powder burn on either hand. The only thing that conflicts with these theories, if it was a Jeffrey Bourne-style cleanup operation, then how did the killer get out and lock the door from the inside? Yeah, sure there was a window, but it was 28 floors straight down. No ID, fake name. With the Norwegian intelligence service giving their standard packed answer of, "We refuse to comment on anything to do with national security." 24 years later, Norwegian investigators have gone on record saying that the young woman they found in a hotel room with a bullet in her head, they believed was murdered because of some form of espionage or government-sanctioned execution. But they've been quite clear to state that no one in the Norwegian government has commented or assisted on the case. Only recently the body was exhumed for additional DNA evidence, but it were a dead end, and all they found was a whole lot of dust. With London, England being one of the oldest cities in the world, well, you'd think that they would have advanced to a certain sort of progression in the human evolution. And the days of witch doctors and human sacrifices are a thing in the past. Well, apparently not. Because on September 4th, 2001, passerby saw what appeared to be the torso of a young black kid floating in the River Thames. And what made it even more inconceivable was when the meat wagon got it back to the station. They figured the kid, a boy between age 7 and 9, had been expertly cut up while he was still alive and drained of his blood as some sort of African ritual, and then the shorts put on afterwards and then thrown in the river. Yeah, I know, it was pretty fucked up. After that, the cops went on a touchy-feely mission because they didn't want to offend anyone, but they threw it out into the community to find out who it were, and no one saw a goddamn thing. But then after offering a reward of £50,000, a community that don't see too good suddenly regained its vision, and everybody were suddenly related to the torso boy. In fact, there were a couple of grifters who convinced police and media alike that the kid was some boy named Adam from Nigeria. And they had everybody going for quite some time, but it turned out to be bullshit, and English cops had to go back to the drawing board. Or should I say Africa, where they started visiting all those witchcraft tribes hoping to find a lead. But it all turned up nothing, and the only thing they came away with were shrunken head keychains. Now with 16 years past, Limey cops admit that they don't have a fucking clue, and the case has gone cold as the waters that they pulled Torso Boy from. And the killer, or killers, are still on the loose, doing God knows what to God knows who.
Legion forever!